Hey guys, welcome back to CrossFit Elkhorn YouTube channel, continuing on with the movement progressions. Today we are going to go over the air squat, which I'm really excited about. Believe it or not, people do the air squat wrong. Many of us do. So Greg Glassman, our founder for CrossFit, had stated that it takes 5 years to develop the perfect squat. And over the course of the years, and after teaching people and going through the ups and downs myself, I truly believe it does take that long to develop that perfect air squat. This is just the air squat. There's many variations of squatting. There's the front squat, the back squat, overhead squat, a lot of different ways of squatting, high bar, low bar, stuff like that. But today we're just doing the basic good old body weight squat. Again, I'm stating this based off of if people have an understanding midline stability, all that stuff. All this has to happen first. I say before every little video, you have to have that understanding of midline stability. Otherwise, this may not feel as good or it may not make much sense. So, typically, when it comes to the air squat, we want to talk about our stance. So our feet, we want to be hip shoulder width apart. You know, it's going to be based off of your comfort with mobility and things like that. I personally changed my squat from a day-to-base, just depending on how I feel that day. Sometimes I push my toes out a little bit more because I may be a little bit tighter on my ankles. I also may have to widen out my feet a little bit more based off of the style of the movement. So it just depends. I'm not saying that's right or wrong, it's just how I personally feel. So we always teach our athletes to be hip shoulder width apart, toes left out slightly. You don't want to be too far out, right? Because the wider your toes out, that could really increase the chances of your foot collapsing in, and I'll show you what I mean by that. So hip shoulder width apart, toes are slightly ducked out, maybe 10, 20 degrees. It doesn't need to be too far, okay? The reason why we set our stance up just like this, because it puts our hips in the correct position. That femoral head sits into the back of the socket, which is what we always talk about with external rotation, just like you would at the shoulder. You want to do the same thing at the hip. So that pushing out the toes helps set your hips up the way they need to be. So I'm going to turn to the side so you can see that full range of motion, which is what we're trying to achieve. So if you were a judge looking at me from the side, what we're going to want to look at is this straight line. My ear is in line with my shoulders, into my hips, all the way down to my heel. Okay, we're going to see that straight line. My hip crease is right here. I know I've got dark shorts, so you can't see very well. My hip crease is right here. That's very important because we want that to get below our knee. That's the range of motion we're looking for. So, that starting position, we like to teach our athletes to start really tall chest. I'm going to have a neutral pelvis, okay? We want to take a look at that. You can take a look at our deadlift video. We talk a lot about anterior tilt, that posterior tilt, which is grounding, right? So we want to be nice and balanced, that neutral pelvis, okay? Now, the mistake people make when it comes to the air squat, they like to initiate from the knees, so they will push their knees forward first, ever before extending or pushing their hips back, all right? Now, what's important to understand, it's a great coaching cue, butt back. It gets people into the right direction, but we don't want to overemphasize that butt back without breaking that midline stability. So what I mean is, if I'm starting here and I tell athletes, and we tell our athletes to push their butt back, well, if they initiate just like this, then they hyperextend, and now they are putting all that pressure on their low back. Okay, so we want to stay neutral. So I'm going to push my butt back while maintaining that neutral pelvis. That's so important to understand. So here, nice and tall, hips back, and then from there, I'm going to tell my athletes to sit on a curve. Okay, I'm sinking straight down, straight down, straight down, making sure that we get that hip crease below my knee. So now, as a judge, I'm going to look at another line. Top of the knee, straight back. All right, we want that position to be below our knee, or below our hip crease below our knee. My weight's on my heels, I'm not falling on my toes. So if I face the camera, hip hinge, sink right on the curve, my arms stay tall to keep my chest right. My knees are going in an outward direction, only because I'm using my glutes, okay? So if I were to stand here, and if I squeeze my butt, you'll see what happens to my kneecaps. And my feet naturally go out. That's because we're loading up those external rotators. We're squeezing our butt. Another coaching cue that coaches will say is knees out, knees out, knees out. You hear that a lot. But what's important to understand is we want to use our external rotators, right? We're not using these hip flexors. For many years, I would squat pushing my knees out because that's what I was told to do. But my brain was using my hip flexors, so I'd always hurt this. You have to understand how to keep the glutes, how to use your butt to push your knees out. So as I'm squatting, you can take a look. I'm hip hinging, I've got that neutral pelvis. I'm squeezing my glutes as I stand up, and that naturally drives my knees in that outward direction. Okay, so from the side view again, starting tall, arms are up, butt back with the neutral hips, pelvis tight, right pelvis tight, sink, 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 hip crease below the knee. I'm not rounding that back too much. I'm staying nice and tall, my glutes are engaged, and as I push, I finish my hips forward back to that straight line position. Okay? Some mobility issues that we see could be the ankles, all right? So, or even the hips. If you see individuals that squat like this, way over, that could be a couple of great things. It could be the hip tightness or it could be ankles. Those ankles must have the ability to move with those knees going forward and out. That's really important. So, we want to take a look at maybe potentially doing the couch stretch, some hamstring stuff, some core stuff, some ankle stuff to make sure all that stuff is in line, all right? We can't just focus on one thing. It could be multiple things. Another common mistake people make is that what we call the butt wink, where those hips tuck at the bottom. Hopefully you can see it. As I'm squatting down, I get that little rounded back, that little hip tuck at the very bottom, where people just sort of collapse, and then they stand tall. So yeah, we're meeting range of motion standards, but if we're tucking, we may be putting sacrifice to that back and we get a lot of low back burning, okay? So typically that butt wink happens is when we go into hyperextension. So if I'm here and I push my butt back and I'm hyperextended as I squat down, you'll see I create a little bit of a wink. My hips tuck at the bottom. Versus if I keep neutral at the beginning, hip hinge, sink down, sink down, sink down, I've lost. I don't have that hip tuck anymore. When I stand tall, I use my butt and lock everything out. That's the air squat. Ideally, where you should be sore after the air squat is your glutes, hamstrings, your stomach. If you are just burning your quads, you're doing it wrong, all right? We're either pushing on our toes or we're collapsing in a little bit, right? Or we're just getting our brain to turn this on, and it's usually you're just pushing through the knees versus pushing through the heels on the backside and using this whole backside of our body. Hopefully that was helpful. If you have any questions, ask us through the website, make comments on the channel, anything like that, Facebook, we're all open. Have a good day, guys.